Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing some Darklord test hands. So I'm really excited for this one because this deck is probably one of my top 3 favorite decks of all time, alongside Magical Musketeers and Blackwings. This is actually one of the decks that I really consistently actually take to tournaments with me, and enter tournaments just to kind of catch people off guard with the first Darklord, and having all the super poly targets that you can play in this particular deck is really good as well, and having some really awesome boss monsters in this deck is awesome, and it has probably some of the best artwork in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the form of Darklord as Shell. So without further ado, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on your screen, come part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below where we have some awesome rewards, you guys, so like getting your name description for every single video, getting a signed card in the mail, or even getting requested deck profile every single month for Patreon along with test hands. So let's go ahead and shuffle the deck up. Make sure that you pile shuffle this deck because you're going to dig deep into this deck to be able to get you all sorts of crazy plays, because this deck can really dig deep into the deck to get you all sorts of draw power that you're going to need, which is really awesome about this deck, that you can get a lot of draw power plays in the deck to be able to just get really deep into the deck. Like in one turn you can draw as many as 6 to 12 cards depending on how you play your cards, especially if you open up like a lure, trade-in, and a shell. You're going to get just 6 cards off of just those. Depending on what else you have in your hand, you can get through the deck pretty easily, which is really awesome. So let's go ahead and see what we can do with our first hand. And there's a lot of different ways to actually play this deck. I used to play a Luna control deck version of this, where you would play Luna Light or Fairy Tale Luna in the deck, and then you'd play all sorts of different cards like your Darklord monsters and Vandy's Fiend and stuff like that, where it was a very control-based deck. So let's go ahead and draw. We're going to get into a Darklord Contact, trade in a copy of Darklord Banishment, trade in again, and a copy of Nargal. So we're going to get at least 4 draws off this hand, which is really cool. So we're going to go ahead and activate Banishment of the Darklords, which is going to let us add from our deck to our hand a copy of... Where is he? Let's go ahead and separate those. That's something else that you can do as you flip through the deck. You can kind of make sure that your cards aren't sticking together, because it can kind of be bad if they do, because you're going to have a lot of issues if you have a lot of cards, like 3 banishments stuck together because they're once per turn. So we're going to go ahead and activate Banishment and add our copy of Superbia from our deck to our hand. Now you have a copy of your trade-in that you can activate, and once you activate that copy of trade-in, you're going to be able to draw 2 more cards. So we're going to draw into a copy of Amadus and the Sanctified Darklord. Now you want to get another Darklord in the graveyard, so you're going to go ahead and activate the copy of trade-in again, sending Nargal to the graveyard because it is a 2, 4, 6, 8. We're going to go ahead and send that to the graveyard and then draw an additional 2 cards, which is great because now we have a revival card. We have a copy of Darklord Contact, which we kind of already had, but you also have a search in the hand. So we're going to go ahead and activate Darklord Contact and special summon back a copy of Darklord Superbia and then Darklord Nargal. Now something that's really interesting that you have to keep in mind about this deck is Darklord Nargal and a lot of the Gen 2, what I call Gen 2, Darklord monsters, with the Gen 1s being Darklord Superbia, which came out of the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX manga, and then these came out of like Destiny Soldiers. The art of them was out of Destiny Soldiers. The effect of this card is basically they share abilities in the Gen 2 ones that have the ability that you can pay 1,000 life points, shuffle a Darklord spell or trap from your graveyard back into the deck, and then once you do, you will get to copy its effect. So for instance, if I were to shuffle Contact back into the deck, I would get to revive an additional Darklord at the cost of 1,000 life points if I had another one. But there's something really interesting that I kind of messed up in my first test hand video, which is why I wanted to do an update of it. But Superbia has a neat effect that when, keyword, when this card is special summoned from the graveyard, you can target a fairy type monster in your graveyard except another copy of itself and special summon that target. So since it's a win effect, if you copy the effect of it, it misses timing because it's not the last thing that happens in the chain. The last thing that happens in the chain is actually putting this back into the deck. So when this revives itself off the copy of the Nargal, like if this was already on the field and this was in the grave and you paid the 1,000 to put the Contact back and then put this on the field, this would not resolve and you wouldn't get a special summon off the copy of Superbia, because this being shuffled back to the hand or deck is the final thing in the chain, which is kind of weird, but it's the way it works. It's actually the ruling for it, if you guys want to check that out. So it's kind of weird, but it's because it says win, not when, or it doesn't say like this card when it, or I don't know, it'll be different, worded differently. So let's go ahead and normal summon out the copy of the Indulged Darklord. So the Indulged Darklord is going to help out a lot in this particular hand, because when it's normal summon, you get to special summon a Darklord monster with a different level to your opponent's side of the field and then add 1 from your deck to your hand. So we're going to go ahead and give our opponent our weakest Darklord monster, and that is going to be Darklord Ukobak, which has a total of 700 attack points. We're going to go ahead and shuffle the deck up. Well, you don't really have to, because you're going to add a Darklord from your deck to your hand. Now, I always personally add from my deck to my hand a copy of Darklord Morningstar. But since you have the copy of Banishment in the graveyard that's going to get you a search, you can get your copy of Darklord Shell, which then you can use with your Amethyst to be able to discard to dig deeper into the deck to get you 2 more draws. Now, we're going to go ahead and pay the 1,000 to be able to shuffle back the copy of Darklord Banishment, because drawing into a Banishment is not going to be a bad thing at all, and grab our copy of Darklord Morningstar, bringing us down to 7,000 life points. So now you can use your copy of your 2 monsters on your side of the field, which is the Indulged Darklord and your copy of the Superbia to go into a copy of the Condemned Darklord. Now keep in mind, this is on your opponent's side of the field. If you guys are unfamiliar with what the Condemned Darklord does, she's really good in this deck too, because she has the ability that you can tribute monsters. Like if I'm going to tribute summon out my copy of Darklord Morningstar, I can banish 2 fairy monsters from the graveyard instead of summoning them from the field, which is going to be, or using them as the field, because she has a really cool effect like that to make it so you don't have to use as many resources to get your high level monsters on the field. She also says that you can discard a Darklord to take a Darklord monster from your deck and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard, which is going to be really helpful to add different Darklord monsters from your deck to your hand to get additional effects off. So we're going to go ahead and summon her to our side of the field, and then we're going to use the copy of a Shell with our copy of Amethyst and send that to the graveyard to be able to draw 2 more cards, which you're going to get a Monster Reborn, which is going to be really helpful because you now have the Superbia in the graveyard that is not once per turn, but since you're just using a regular revival spell like a copy of Monster Reborn and you're bringing it back to your side of the field like so, you can still use the copy of Superbia's effect to be able to get an additional monster on your side of the field, which is kind of nice. We're then, since we got our copy of our 2 draws, which was another Contact and the copy of Monster Reborn, you can then, if you want to, discard like a copy of one of your 2 Contacts to the graveyard and then add a Darklord monster from your deck to your hand, which I would recommend grabbing the Indulged Darklord, because again, it's going to get you a search anyways off any of your other Darklords that you need, like a copy of a Shell that you might need next turn, but you're going to want to use that normal summon because she's like the only normal summon in the entire deck besides Ukabak. You only play 4 normal summons in the entire deck now. I think I've only ever played 4 in this entire deck anyways. So, you can then use the Shell's effect to pay 1,000, shuffle the Contact back into the deck, and then once you summon the Contact, or put the Contact back in the deck, she's going to let you shuffle that card, and then special summon a Darklord from the graveyard, which is going to probably be your Amethyst that you're going to want to summon back to your side of the field. So, now that you have 4 Darklords on your side of the field, you can then set your copy of your Sanctified Darklord on your side of the field, trying your best to play around the copy of Impermanence, and then, or not Impermanent, yeah, Impermanence, and your copy of the other card that they play, oh my goodness, what is it called? The copy of Mech Knights. So then you can take your copy of Hope Harboring Dragon Titanic Galaxy and overlay your 2 level 8s to give you a spell negation as well. So you have 2 really powerful monsters on your side of the field, and you also have plenty of searches in your hand. Now keep in mind, you started with 5 cards, you ended with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cards on your side of the field. So you went +3 just off this particular turn, which is pretty good. You did give your opponent a monster, but that's totally fine because we got a complete setup of what we need. The really cool thing is with your Indulged Darklord, if your opponent doesn't deal with this, and for say that I top deck into a copy of Super Polymerization, it's pretty much game over because I have this really cool play. Now let's just say that this is on top of the deck. They don't deal with the Ukabak and they board wipe me. Okay, they leave the Ukabak on the field and they board wipe me and I have nothing left. Okay, maybe I keep the Indulged Darklord. Maybe that's the only one that I keep on my side of the field. That's it. So what we're going to do with this particular play is we're going to go ahead and activate. Actually, it doesn't even matter. We're going to go ahead and send that to the grave. It's not even going to matter. We're going to go ahead and with our turn, we're going to draw into a card, which is going to be our copy of Super Polymerization. You're going to use Contact. Contact is then going to special summon back from the graveyard a copy of Superbia and a copy of a Shell. And then we're going to send that to the graveyard. Normal summon our copy of the Indulged Darklord, which is going to give our opponent another Darklord, and we're going to get it to add a Darklord from our deck to our hand, which we're just going to give him Nazden. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to add a copy of a Shell from my deck to my hand, and then I'm going to link summon together. Now keep in mind my opponent has these 2 Darklords, which is kind of what happens in the live duels, but I'm going to go ahead and link these 2 together, and I'm going to summon out the copy of Indulged, and then I'm going to banish 2 Darklords from the graveyard, and once I do, I can normal summon out my copy of the Darklord Morningstar, and then Darklord Morningstar will let me special summon Darklords from the deck equal to the opponent's monsters that they control, and then guess what we can do? You can use the Super Poly, discard this, use the copy of the Darklord Morningstar, Morning Star and the 2 Dark Fairies that they control and go directly into your copy of the first Darklord. If they don't deal with the Darklord, indulge Darklord on their side of the field, which basically they're going to have a big problem with anyways. And you have the copy of the first Darklord at 4,000 that can board wipe your opponent. And that's why Super Poly is so powerful, because of the Indulged Darklord. Even if it just gives them 1 material, you're still going to basically get all the materials that you need off your copy of the Morning Star to get this. And is why Super Polymerization is crazy in this deck, because it's a speed spell 4 that not only destroys your opponent's entire field, but can out multiple cards that you gave them if they don't get rid of them with Link Summoning. And it depends on what kind of deck you're playing against, depends on if they can even get rid of them. Because if you're playing against a strictly XZ-based deck like Zodiacs or something like that, it's going to be a little bit tougher for them to get rid of their copy of Ukobak off their field, so it's going to end up being more of a hindrance to them than a really good extra material to use as link material. So it kind of depends on what you're playing against as well, especially against something like maybe Eldridge. Giving them a copy of that on their side of the field, they're going to have a little bit of a tougher time getting rid of it, and they're going to think, oh, free monster, cool, I'm just going to use this. Well, guess what? No, it's not. I'm going to Super Poly it away. I'm trying to get monsters on the field to use off of mine and your side to go into my first Darklord. So let's go ahead and shuffle the deck up again and see what we can go into. So let's go ahead and go into another test hand. So we're going to go ahead and draw a copy of Archlord Christia, Superbia, Rebellion, a copy of Allure of Darkness, and a copy of Ashell. So this is pretty good right off the bat. I would use probably the Ashell. I'll probably use the Allure. I go ahead and use the Allure, draw 2. And I would banish probably the Superbia, because you're not going to need the Superbia because you can grab another one. So we're going to go ahead and use the copy of the banishment and get a copy of Superbia from the deck. Make sure that you separate your cards as you go if you see them kind of stuck together, because that's very important. Grab your Superbia. See, I had 3 cards in the deck that were just stuck together from the last game. And you really kind of want to flip through and be like, I don't know what I want to get. Let me just see what I can get. Like, oh, I want a Superbia. Let me just grab that. So it kind of helps the deck out. It's kind of like a little make sure thing, kind of like an old dad rule. Make sure your cards aren't stuck together when you search. Kind of helps out. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to use the copy of Ashell with the copy of Superbia, and we're going to discard these 2 to the graveyard and hope that we get something, because if you don't, you kind of bricked, which is a little bit of a downside to the deck because you kind of rely on that draw of this deck. So we're going to get into a copy of Indulge, so we're okay. So we're going to go ahead and normal summon the copy of Indulge Darklord, and we're going to use its effect to be able to give our opponent a copy of Ukobak again, and we're going to add from our deck to our hand a particular Darklord that might help us a little bit in a situation like this. And you guys might be thinking, oh man, what are we going to add? What's going to help us? Nadston. Nadston's going to be the big card that's going to help you the most, because it's going to get you your 4 Darklords in the graveyard to be able to go into your Christia, which is then going to add your copy of Ashell back to your hand, which you're going to think, oh wait, how? Watch. So what you're going to do is you're going to use your copy of Nadston, ditch these 2 from your hand, and they're going to actually do you really a lot more good in the graveyard, and summon Nadston. That's when Nadston's really good. Nadston's really bad when you use monsters to discard, but when you use your traps, where you can just use his effect to be able to pop stuff or take control of the monsters, he's pretty good. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and link these 2 together on your side of the field, or you can pay the 1,000 if you want to shuffle back your Darklord enchantment to be able to take back the Ukobak onto your side of the field. If you want to, it's totally up to you. I believe it's till the end phase. Let me double check. Until the end phase, yeah. If you want to get that one back, you can get that one back onto your side of the field, and you can actually keep the Nadston on your side of the field because you can take control of the copy of the Ukobak. Link these together, and once you link these together, it's going to give you exactly 4 fairies in the graveyard, get your condemned Darklord onto your side of the field, and then guess what? Special summon out your copy of Archlord Christia, which basically makes it so your opponent cannot special summon. And when this card is special summoned, it has the ability to be exactly 4 fairies in your graveyard, which guess what? We have exactly 4 fairies in the graveyard. You can use the effect of this card to special summon it to your side of the field. Neither player can special summon it. Also lets you target a fairy in your graveyard and add it back to your hand, which is probably going to be my Indulged Darklord, because I can normal summon that and I don't need to get the other ones back. So now that you have this on your side of the field, which is really good, you also had the effect of your Nadston that says, hey, you can use its effect during either player's turn. So when your opponent normal summons, you can use the Nazton to be able to use the copy of Rebellion to be able to pop a card on the field during your opponent's turn, which is pretty helpful. You also have the Super Poly that you can deal with an opponent's card if you want to, or you can ditch the copy of Super Poly with the Condemned Darklord to be able to add from your deck to your hand a copy of another Darklord monster. For example, since you already have the Indulged Darklord, you could add in a Shell, so if you draw into another Darklord, you can discard it to get you a double draw, which is going to help you out a lot in the long run. So your opponent can't special summon. You have a 1600, a 26, and a 28 beater on your side of the field. It's not any negates, but this card is really powerful just getting itself out on the field. And if you pass turn, you're going to be able to normal summon your Indulged Darklord. You're not going to be able to resolve effect because you can't special summon a Darklord monster to your opponent's side of the field, which is kind of a bummer, but you're still going to get a 1600 beat stick. And if you draw, you're going to get into a copy of Trade-In, which is not going to do that much good, but you still have the copy of Nazton that can actually get you a search with the copy of Banishment, which is going to come in handy to shuffle that back and then grab a copy of Superbia. Actually, see, that's bad. See, that's what you watch out for when you're playing Darklords, because you're shuffling a lot of your spells and traps back into the deck and they go to weird places. I don't know why, but for me, they always go into weird places. So we're going to go ahead and grab Superbia, use the copy of Trade-In with Superbia, and draw 2 more. And if we draw into another Darklord, which we did, you have the copy of Morningstar now, which if you want to normal summon the Morningstar, you can. Next turn, if the Indulged Darklord goes away, you can tribute Christia and the Indulged Darklord and get it onto your side of the field, and then special summon as many monsters as you want. And if you draw into Super Poly off its effect, you're going to get even deeper, which you have the copy of Allure. Draw 2, you got Super Poly, you have your copy of the first Darklord if you haven't already won at this point. So that's it for that test hand. Let's do one more and see what we can do. As you guys can see, the deck is very, very consistent. You didn't really brick it all. Like you got lucky on your draws, which is usually how the deck rolls. You get very lucky on draws and it works. And that's what's really cool about the deck, is that you get a lucky draw and you win, which is what's really neat. And there's not a lot of times that you don't get a lucky draw because you're playing literally 4 Monster Reborns, 3 Rhodas, and then you're playing like 9 draw 2s in the deck, so you have a lot of different ability to dig into this deck. So we're gonna go ahead and shuffle it up, cut the deck really quick, and see what we can get. So we're gonna get a copy of a Shell. This is already good. Super Polymerization, that's really good. Nazton and Contact, and a copy of Uprising. Ooh, Uprising. That makes it even better. Let's go ahead and use the copy of a Shell with the Uprising and send that to Graveyard to be able to draw 2 more, which is a Morningstar and a copy of Zerato. So this is pretty good already, because this card, you don't have to pay. A really cool thing, if you guys don't know about Darklords, you don't have to pay cost for the traps if you shuffle them back into the deck by sending a Darklord. So this card lets you fusion summon a Dark Fusion monster from your extra using monster in your hand or field as fusion materials. So the really neat thing about this is you can actually interrupt your opponent mid-board with this card with just 1 card. So we're going to go ahead and use the copy of Contact, special summon back our Shell to our side of the field. And once you special summon the Shell to your side of the field, or you can even go about it a different route. Instead of summoning the Shell, you can use the Nazton in your hand, send these to the graveyard, summon the Nazton to your side of the field, and then use the Contact to be able to bring back your copy of a Shell to use it next turn, which is going to be able to be even more helpful because you got 2 monsters. And you got a Super Poly just in case. So midway through your opponent's board, what's really neat about this is you can pay 1,000. And actually, if you wanted to, oh yeah, you paid 1,000 and you shuffle this back into the deck. If you pay 1,000 now during your opponent's turn, you can use the Uprising, shuffle it back into the deck, and then use all 3 of these monsters that you have and go directly into your copy of the first Darklord, which is pretty good because it has the ability that if this card is fusion summoned using Darklord Morningstar, you can draw cards your opponent controls. So it board wipes your opponent. It makes it so your opponent cannot target fairy monsters you control with card effects, and you can only use 1 of the following effects per turn. So during your next turn, you can just during your main phase pay 1,000 to special summon a fairy monster from your hand or graveyard, which can be your Shell, which then will get you additional plays as well. So if we draw into our next card, it's going to be a Superbia. Then you can use the Shell to be able to pay the 1,000, get the Shell back on your side of the field, or get the Zerato onto your side of the field. And if you get Zerato, it has the ability to send a dark monster in your hand to the graveyard and board wipe your opponent again. And then these 2 can just kind of go in for game with the 4,028. And you also have the copy of the Super Polymerization that if you go into your next turn, your opponent couldn't handle this, but they left you 2 darks on the field, you can just, instead of reviving this, discard this to the graveyard and be able to go directly into a copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. If you can go into that, if your opponent left you 2 darks on the field, you can just go directly into Starving Venom them and OTK them this way. It kind of depends on which way you want to go. So I think that pretty much sums up the entire deck. Just remember that if you, again, for example, if I have Nazton on the field, this is very, very, very important that a lot of Darklord players, even myself, have been guilty of. Like, it happens that sometimes you misunderstand a ruling. I want to explain this one to you guys to make sure that everybody gets it. If you have a copy of Superbia in the graveyard, and say you have another copy of Nazton in the graveyard, and you have a copy of Contact in the graveyard, and you activate this card's effect, and you pay 1,000 to shuffle back your Contact into the deck, and you select the copy of Superbia to put back on your field, since the last effect in the effect is to shuffle this back, the win effect of Superbia misses timing. That is very important for you guys to understand, and even for myself to get, that it is very important to remember that Superbia is a win effect, so you do miss timing. So that's something to keep in mind about this, but it's a really good deck still overall to be able to go into, and it's really budget now. Like, I can't believe how budget this deck actually is. It's gotten reprinted, like, a shell's gotten reprinted like 3 times now, which is just insane to me. I remember paying $25 a piece per shell when she originally came out, and I do not regret paying $25 a piece because I have played this deck a lot, and I would do it again. I would still pay $25 for a shell, which I probably shouldn't, but I probably would. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell next to become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below because we have all those awesome rewards, you guys, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.